Om Tyageshwaram Ramakrishnam Saradam Matrirupinim Vivekananda Mahacharyam Natva Vakshami Shuddhaya. I've been discussing this Narada Bhakti Sutra, a sutra that talks about certain moral disciplines that every bhakta should follow and which are kind of natural to a parabhakta. Without morality, there can be no spirituality, and just we are devotees, it's no free pass for us to contravene these moral disciplines. Ahimsa, Satya, Shil disciplines that have been enumerated in this sutra. So ahimsa is non-violence, non-violence in thought, word and deed. We don't hurt anyone physically. That's that's more or less easy. But through thought also we don't hurt anyone. Through word also we don't anyone. We don't hurt anyone. That's a bit difficult. In the sense that when we speak, we shouldn't hurt others. And even in thought, we should not hurt others. Thinking ill of others. No, we shouldn't do that. That is non-violence. And we should not directly do it. We should not cause it to be done. We should not sanction it. All these are there. This non-violence is not a very easy virtue to follow. In thought, word and deed, not hurting others. And most important, and I think difficult, that is where the whole practice part comes. We should be sure, or we should ensure that inadvertently, out of callousness also, we do not hurt others. So we are conscious to not hurt others, and we see that we don't hurt others, but we should also make an effort that even inadvertently, out of our callousness, we should not hurt others. So there is an effort involved as we interact with others, as we think of others. Even by mistake, even inadvertently, we should not hurt others. We should not engage in himsa. The point is, it is a practice. There is an effort involved to be careful, to not hurt others. That's what ahimsa is about. And the counterpart of ahimsa was daya. That's what we discussed. Daya, Sri Ramakrishna has changed it to seva. And not simple seva, but Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. Serving other human beings, seeing God in them. That is a dynamic aspect, so to say, of daya. Compassion is an emotion of heart, but seva doesn't stay just in heart. It overflows into action. So it's proactive compassion, so to say. Seva is proactive compassion. So we have to not just feel for others, feel compassion for others, but it has to translate itself in helping others, in serving others. That is seva. And that seva again has two characteristics. One is it has to be done with humility. There is no benefactor-beneficiary relationship in seva. We are not the benefactors. The person who serves is not a benefactor and the receiver as beneficiary. No, it is not so. It's more of a servant-master relationship. We are there to serve God in those forms. So that humility has to be there in seva. And second aspect is there is no scope for discrimination in seva. Discrimination in terms of whom we serve. If we serve only our own relatives and people who think they are ours, it is not seva. If we serve only persons belong to a particular group, on whatever distinction we make, based on whatever distinction a particular group is served, that is not seva. That is not Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. That's also seva, but that's not Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. In this, seva that is advocated by Sri Ramakrishna. There is we speak truth. Speaking truth is the way I understand things, sure that the hearer understands them in exactly the same way. That is speaking truth. The way I see things, I ensure that the hearer understands them exactly in the same way. That is speaking truth. There is no half truth. There is no scope for half truth. Not only I have to say what is fact, I also have to make sure that the hearer understands it that way. That is speaking truth. And there is living truth. If I say something, I should live up to it. That is living truth. You know, being devotees, another aspect of living truth is being devotees, we should live like devotees. Sometimes some people behave in such undevoted or undevotee manner. They behave in such undevotee manner. They are devotees. We should live like devotees. We should behave like devotees. We should conduct ourselves like devotees. That is truth. And third, Sri Ramakrishna says, Manmukh act karo. What we think, what is inside, and what we speak, they should tally. They should tally. So he says, Mukhe madhur antare garol. So there is poison inside and nectar on the tongue. That is not living the truth or thinking the truth or talking the truth. If we have very hard feelings, better keep quiet on such times. But there are a lot of people, they have so much of poison within, but this honey flows through their words. That kind of duplicacy, that is not truthful behavior. That is not truthful thinking. That is not truthful words. So devotee has to avoid all these. There should be transparency in our thoughts, words, and action. There should be consistency in our thoughts, words, and action. So that is the value or the moral discipline called Satya. Ahimsa, Daya, Satya, then there is Shuchi, that is purity. So far as external purity is concerned, devotee takes care of the hygiene, and that's where it ends. He or she is not so much bothered about ceremonial purity. But hygiene is, yes, important. More important is internal purity, purity of the heart. And what causes impurity are the egocentric drives of attachment, hatred, fear, anger, whatever. So all these egocentric drives, these are the impurity. And in their place, these other qualities like compassion, truthfulness, these are this non-violence. These are what are called. These will contribute to purity of mind. And above all, the remembrance of God. You know, apavitra pavitro va sarvavastham gato yes, maret pundarikaksham sabhaya bhantara shuchi. So name of God and remembrance of God, that is the best of purifiers, so to say. So Shuchi is another thing, and the last of this is Astikya. This Astikya is the attitude of an Astika. Astika is a believer in the Vedas, in afterlife, in God, in the spiritual destiny of human beings, in the spiritual nature of human beings. Person who believes in all these is called an Astika, believer. And the attitude of an Astika is called Astikya. Now, here it appears superfluous because we are talking about a devotee itself. So, devotee always, or it's expected that he or she will have faith in all these, will be a believer. So there seems no need to cultivate this astikya per se, practice this astikya per se, but maybe Narada wants us to guard against this nastika thoughts, godless thoughts coming to us through persons, literature, audiovisual medium. So we should avoid such thoughts which promote godlessness. They can come to us through various means. So we should guard ourselves against these and keep intact this astikya buddhi. So these are 4 or 5 moral disciplines which Narada lists here. There are many others. But important point that we should remember is that we have to follow these for a purpose, and that purpose is developing devotion for God. We don't follow this just for the sake of following or just for the sake of being moral. The devotee follows moral disciplines in order to develop love and devotion for God. So that internal orientation, so to say, that compass has to be checked again and again. Based on Viveka and Vairagya. See, based on Viveka and Vairagya, and this mumukshutva, or desire to know God, desire to realize God, desire to develop love for God, that is the main purpose of human life. And these moral disciplines are aids to that. We shouldn't forget it. Because sometimes these disciplines or whatever these practices, they have a tendency to drown the very purpose as to why we undertake them. Karma yoga, the yoga is lost, only karma remains. By doing seva, it's a kind of an inebriation, and you get so carried away that you forget God. So that shouldn't happen. But we can speak truth in a gentle manner. We need not speak truth in a harsh way that will hurt others. Because speaking truth alone is not a virtue. It has to be told in a way that is pleasant. And we can do that only if we know why we are doing it. We are speaking truth, we are living truth because we want to develop that devotion for God. So that internal compass has to be checked repeatedly as to why we are doing this. The purpose of life is to develop devotion for God, to realize God, and for that all these are aids. So these have to be undertaken, practiced in a way they will help increase devotion. They have to practice in such a way that they will help increase our devotion to God. So we should not forget the purpose of our life in trying to follow these moral disciplines. And that's why this introspection, Viveka and Vairagya, without these, we cannot follow these moral disciplines. We cannot strive to develop devotion for God. Discrimination of what is anukula, what is conducive, such thoughts, such actions that are conducive to developing devotion are to be undertaken, and such thoughts and actions which are counterproductive are to be shunned. So that's how Viveka Vairagya come into picture. These two have to be practiced along with these moral virtues. Without Viveka Vairagya, there is no life of a bhakta. We have to understand that. So all these go together, and then only the direction we are able to maintain. Having said that, the next sutra is almost concludes this particular subject when he says, Sarvada sarva bhavena nishchintitaihi bhagavaneva bhajaniyaha. That is the sutra. Sarvada means at all times, in all places. Sarva bhavena means in all ways. Nishchintitaihi, with a mind free of cares and worries. Bhagavaneva bhajaniya. God alone is to be worshipped. So at all times, in all places, in all ways, with a mind free of worries and cares, God alone is to be worshipped. That is the sutra. This is the state of a Mukhya Bhakta. And end of this, so to say, subject. As I said, this is just one step below the Parabhakti. So it's a very high state, this particular state that is mentioned in this sutra. We can aspire for it, we can strive for it. It is not natural for us. But we should strive for this, attaining to this state. That is the immediate goal. As I said earlier, Mukhya Bhakti is our immediate goal. Parabhakti will come later. This Mukhya Bhakti is our immediate goal, and this is, so to say, the culmination of this Mukhya Bhakti, or the final product of this Mukhya Bhakti. This is what we have to be before we become Parabhaktas. So it says, Sarvada, in all places, at all times. You see, there is no sacred and secular. It's not that only in temple or in puja room God is worshipped and God is not worshipped outside. At all places God is worshipped. God is to be worshipped. God should be worshipped. God can be worshipped. It is not that morning, evening we worship God and other times we forget God. That's also. So at all times, in all places, God is to be worshipped. For Bhakta, there is no sacred and secular. There is no secular at all. Everything is sacred. So how can we worship at all times, in all places? That is, if we learn how to worship God, sarva bhavena, in all ways, in all respects. Only we can worship when we learn to worship, when we strive to worship God in all ways. Then only we can worship God at all times and in all places. So when Swamiji gave a very beautiful description of sarva bhavena, in all ways. He says this, there are three contexts, these come in the scriptures. Adhyatmika context, Adi Daivika and Adi Bhautika. So Adhyatmika context is in the context of our own self. We can be in touch with God in the context of our own self. God is our real nature. That is the goal of our life. That God is not somewhere outside sitting in somewhere. Of course, God is there in Ramakrishna Loka and Shiva Loka, no doubt, but God is here also, in our own heart, as the essence of our being. What we think of ourselves, our idea about ourselves. God is implicit in that our idea about ourselves. God is implicit. So that is thinking of God in one's own context, Adhyatmika. Adi Daivika is in the context of natural forces. The whole world is being run by natural forces of nature. So God is behind all these natural forces. The one who runs the world, it is God who is running the world. And Adi Bhautika is in the context of other beings. God is the self of all. All beings are representations of God. So that is thinking of God, getting in touch with God in the context of other beings. So we have to make an effort to be in touch with God in all these three contexts. In the context of our own being, in the context of the world, in the context of other beings. To put it the other way, according to Vedanta, God is the avinna nimitta upadana karana, non-different material and efficient cause. So his material cause, all things and beings are nothing but God. God is the material cause. God is the material out of which everything has come out, so to say. Everything has manifested itself, the names and forms. So God is the substratum of all things and beings. God is the efficient cause. So God is the niyanta. That which is the efficient cause is the controller. So God is the controller of this world. He is the owner of this world, so to say. And just as all actions belong to the owner, all the work that is happening in this world, everything, in any corner of the world, all the work that is happening, that belongs to God. Ultimately, all work belongs to God. because the whole world, the whole creation belongs to God. So there is no my work, your work, his work, her work, nothing. All work belongs to God. So whatever we do, it is a service of God. If we do a bit analysis, we will know that work that is happening, what we are doing is a service of God. And whatever is happening, he being the controller, it is also happening by his will, by the will of God. Nothing happens without his will. You say law of karma is the expression of God's will. Law of karma cannot function without God's will. So law of karma is also an expression of God's will. So all things and beings are God's manifestations. All the work that we do is God's seva. And whatever is happening is the will of God. Bhavena, worshipping God. If one can live with this attitude, if one can be aware of this truth as one goes through the world, goes through the activities of the day, that person is worshipping God sarvato bhavena, sarva bhavena. And automatically it will become sarvada. It will become at all places, at all times, because it is sarva bhavena. Such a person's life will be, so to say, an act of continuous worship. There won't be anything secular in such a person's life. Such a person will be living a life inspired by God's love. And this is not something that is being superimposed. It is not something that is being superimposed. Something which is not true, we are trying to assume. We are trying to imagine. It's not that. This is the truth. We are just being aware of the truth. God has become everything. God is the ruler of this world, the owner of this world. And all action belongs to God. And whatever is happening by the will of God. And this is the truth. So when we try to live life accordingly, we are just trying to live in the light of the truth, in the wake of the truth. We are not trying to superimpose something that is not true. Rather, we are trying to remember what is true. We are trying to live in the wake of the truth, in the light of the truth. So that is the life of a devotee. Sarva bhavena, in all ways, in all aspects, there is worship of God going on. At all times, in all places. And when that happens, nischintitaihi, one automatically becomes carefree and free of anxiety and all that. Nischintitaihi is a couple of explanations. One is being free from all the distractions caused by different philosophies. So different philosophies are there and all that. So Bhakta need not bother about all these or get himself or herself disturbed by all this. Be free from all these. Nischintitaihi. The other point to know is this carefreeness which comes to a bhakta. It comes on account of his or her devotion to God, his or her faith in God. To the extent we have faith in God, to that extent we will have carefreeness. It can be taken as an indicator of our devotion and faith in God. More faith we develop in God, more carefreeness we will have in our life. But one warning, caution, so to say. This carefreeness and the joy that comes out of it, these are not the goal of a bhakta. These are not the goal of a bhakti. Bhakti is not to be practiced in order to be carefree, in order to have that joy of carefreeness. That is not the goal. The goal is bhakti itself. This is an indicator, that's it. We should not think that bhakta practices bhakti in order to be carefree. That is not the case, nor should we take it that way. Bhakti is not to be practiced in order to enjoy carefreeness. No, that's just a byproduct, that's just an indicator. Bhakti is important. Carefreeness will come on its own accord. So, like that, then Nischintata will come on its own, and Bhagwaneva Bhajaniya, God alone is to be worshipped. All right. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.